July 7, 1944. Saipan, Mariana Islands. The pre-dawn stillness was a deceptive shroud over the smoldering landscape, a brief respite before an inferno. American Marines and Army infantry dug into their defensive perimeters, scanned the darkness, their rifles and machine guns ready. Intelligence reports had warned of a colossal, desperate gambit. The largest banzai charge in the history of the Pacific War was imminent. It was a strategic decision born of fanaticism and the grim calculus of a lost battle, a final suicidal push to overrun the American lines. In the thick of the anticipated maelstrom was Lieutenant Colonel William O'Brien, commanding the 1st Battalion, 8th Marines. As the first faint light of dawn began to paint the eastern sky, illuminating the grim faces of his men, O'Brien made his final preparations. He gripped not one, but two Colt M1911A1's .45 ACP pistols, their weight a reassuring presence in the face of the impending chaos. His objective was starkly simple, yet profoundly difficult: survive the human wave that was about to break upon their positions. Then it came. Thousands of Japanese soldiers, screaming banzai, surged from the tree lines and cane fields, bayonets fixed, grenades clutched, driven by a fanatical resolve. The American lines erupted in a cacophony of small arms fire, mortar blasts, and the thud of incoming artillery. It was a desperate close-quarters melee, a brutal exchange where the distance between combatants collapsed to mere feet, then inches. In this crucible of hand-to-hand fighting, where rifles became unwieldy and ammunition quickly expended, the personal sidearm transitioned from a secondary weapon to an instrument of survival. Amidst the swirling mass of attackers, O'Brien, despite taking a crippling wound to his arm, fought with unyielding ferocity. His two M1911A1s barked repeatedly, spitting heavy .45 caliber projectiles into the onrushing Japanese ranks. The impact of the M1911A1 was immediate, devastating, and psychologically shattering. Unlike the smaller, less potent rounds often encountered, the .45 ACP delivered a blunt, incapacitating blow, often dropping an enemy soldier with a single shot. This terrifying efficiency, wielded by men like O'Brien, became an undeniable factor in the savage close-quarters engagements, sowing fear and disrupting the momentum of the desperate charge. It was here, in the blood-soaked chaos of Saipan's dawn, that the M1911A1 began to etch its formidable and indeed fearsome legacy onto the consciousness of the Japanese soldier. The psychological toll exacted by the M1911A1 on Saipan was not an isolated incident. It was the inevitable outcome of a fundamental disparity in weapon design philosophies. To comprehend this tactical chasm, we must examine the two primary pistols that defined close-quarters engagements in the Pacific: the American M1911A1 and the Japanese Type 14 Nambu. The M1911A1, a quintessential American sidearm, was the brainchild of the prolific firearms designer John Moses Browning. Its genesis was rooted in hard-won combat experience, specifically the inadequate performance of the .38 long Colt against the Moro tribesmen in the Philippine-American War. The U.S. Army's subsequent requirement was clear: a pistol chambered for a large-caliber cartridge capable of delivering overwhelming stopping power. The .45 ACP round, a heavy 230-grain projectile, was the answer. This design philosophy prioritized raw, decisive incapacitation, engineering a weapon not for elegant plinking, but for the brutal, unequivocal resolution of close-range confrontations. It was a tool built for the absolute finality of the battlefield. In stark contrast, Imperial Japan's primary sidearm, the Type 14 Nambu, reflected a different strategic calculus. Designed by Colonel Kajiro Nambu, this pistol drew visual inspiration from European designs, particularly the revered German Luger. However, its internal mechanisms and, crucially, its chosen caliber, the 8x22mm Nambu, were far less potent. While exhibiting a higher muzzle velocity than the .45 ACP, its lighter 100-grain projectile possessed significantly less kinetic energy and, consequently, dramatically reduced stopping power. The Nambu was conceived primarily as a badge of rank for officers, a personal defense weapon rather than a primary combat instrument engineered for the harrowing demands of a banzai charge or a trench-clearing operation. Its very existence underscored a doctrinal oversight concerning the true lethality required of a battlefield sidearm. These two pistols, therefore, represented more than just different national armaments. They embodied divergent military doctrines and industrial capabilities. The M1911A1 was a testament to American pragmatism and a ruthless commitment to battlefield efficacy, designed to instill fear and decisively end engagements. The Nambu, while aesthetically appealing, was a product of a more constrained industrial base and a tactical philosophy that simply did not foresee the desperate, visceral close-quarters fighting that would define the Pacific War. This fundamental collision of design philosophies would soon manifest in the most brutal fashion, with profound implications for the soldiers who wielded them and, indeed, for those who faced their muzzles. While John Moses Browning's M1911A1 was an engineering marvel, a robust, reliable, and ergonomic sidearm, its true legend and the terror it instilled originated from the formidable cartridge it chambered, the .45 ACP. This round was not a product of theoretical design, but born from the crucible of necessity. Specifically, the brutal close-quarters engagements of the Moro Rebellion in the Philippines. In the early 20th century, American forces encountered fanatical Moro warriors who, fueled by religious fervor and often under the influence of narcotics, frequently continued to fight despite sustaining multiple hits from the standard issue .38 long Colt revolver. The .38 caliber round, with its limited kinetic energy transfer, proved woefully inadequate for immediate incapacitation. This critical deficiency led directly to a series of rigorous scientific evaluations, the Thomson-Lagarde tests of 1904. These comprehensive ballistic studies, involving a range of calibers and projectiles fired into live cattle and human cadavers, definitively concluded that a minimum .45 caliber projectile was essential for achieving the necessary stopping power to reliably and immediately incapacitate an adversary in combat. Thus, the .45 automatic Colt pistol, or .45 ACP, was developed. It launched a heavy 230-grain projectile at approximately 830 feet per second. Unlike the smaller, faster rounds that might simply punch through a target, the .45 ACP was designed for maximum energy transfer within the target. Its large diameter and blunt profile created a significantly larger temporary and permanent wound cavity, causing extensive tissue damage, disrupting vital organs, and often resulting in immediate neurological shock. This wasn't merely a wound, it was a devastating impact. For the Japanese soldier, conditioned to face smaller, less potent pistol rounds, the sheer, undeniable force of a .45 ACP hit was a shock. Eyewitness accounts and captured diaries frequently describe the M1911A1 as a weapon of terrifying power, capable of knocking a man off his feet with a single shot, a stark contrast to the less decisive effects of their own 8mm Nambu rounds. The terminal ballistics of the .45 ACP ensured that when a Marine or soldier engaged an enemy at close range, the very scenario pistols are designed for, the engagement was often decisively concluded. This capability, born from hard-won experience, became a critical psychological weapon, imbuing American forces with confidence and their adversaries with a profound sense of dread regarding the .45 caliber sidearm. Yet, the overwhelming efficacy of the M1911A1 was starkly contrasted by its Japanese counterpart, the Type 14 Nambu pistol. Conceived by Colonel Kijiro Nambu and adopted in 1914, the Nambu was intended to provide a modern sidearm for Japanese officers. However, its design principles and execution were fundamentally flawed, rendering it more of a symbol of rank than a reliable instrument of war. At the heart of the Nambu's deficiency was its anemic 8x22mm cartridge. This round fired a comparatively lightweight 100-grain bullet at approximately 1,000 feet per second. While its muzzle velocity might appear respectable on paper, the projectile's diminutive mass and diameter translated into a woefully inadequate terminal ballistics profile. Unlike the M1911A1's devastating .45 ACP, which delivered a profound hydrostatic shock and wide wound channel, the Nambu round was often described as merely poking a pencil-thin hole through an enemy. In the brutal close-quarters engagements of the Pacific, where immediate incapacitation was paramount, the Nambu frequently failed to stop an attacker even with multiple hits. Beyond its underpowered cartridge, the Nambu was plagued by a litany of design flaws that compromised its combat utility. Its safety mechanism was notoriously unreliable, prone to accidental engagement or disengagement, a critical liability in the chaos of battle. The magazine release button, often stiff and poorly positioned, proved difficult to manipulate under duress, hindering rapid reloads, a fatal impediment when facing an onslaught. Perhaps most critically, the Type 14 lacked a slide lock, meaning the slide would not hold open after the last round was fired. This seemingly minor oversight presented a significant tactical disadvantage. An officer might believe their pistol was loaded only to discover it was empty at the most critical juncture. These inherent weaknesses coalesced to transform the Nambu from a potential weapon into a mere accoutrement. Japanese military doctrine, which emphasized the sword and bayonet, relegated the pistol to a secondary, almost ceremonial status for officers. This cultural perspective, combined with the Nambu's demonstrable shortcomings, meant that while an M1911A1 in American hands represented a final decisive solution in a firefight, a Nambu often represented little more than a badge of rank, offering minimal practical advantage or psychological reassurance to its wielder. The disparity in combat effectiveness was not merely academic. It was a matter of life and death, shaping the tactical landscape and the very psychology of close combat on the Pacific battlefields. While the technical specifications of the M1911A1 paint a compelling picture, its true impact, and indeed the terror it instilled, was forged in the crucible of close-quarters combat. For Japanese soldiers, the first encounters with the .45 ACP were often brutal, immediate, and utterly decisive. Consider the harrowing dawn of July 7, 1944 on Saipan, during the largest banzai charge of the Pacific War. Lieutenant Colonel William O'Brien, commander of the 1st Battalion, 6th Marine Regiment, found himself at the epicenter of this human wave attack. As thousands of screaming Japanese soldiers surged forward, O'Brien, severely wounded, stood his ground, not with a rifle, but with two M1911A1 pistols clutched in his hands. He fired continuously, the thunderous reports of the .45s tearing through the chaos, each round delivering a staggering blow. His aide, Major George C. McNally, later recounted, "He was wounded, but he just stood there shooting at Japs. He was shooting them down like ducks." The sheer concussive force and devastating terminal ballistics of the .45 ACP rounds proved unequivocally effective, dropping charging adversaries with a finality that smaller calibers simply could not match. This desperate stand was not an isolated incident. Throughout the grueling campaigns across the Pacific, from Guadalcanal's jungles to Okinawa's caves, the M1911A1 repeatedly proved its worth as a last-ditch yet profoundly lethal instrument. Private Tom Baker, another Marine hero, faced a similar scenario, overwhelmed by a Japanese assault. With his rifle out of commission, Baker resorted to his M1911A1. In a testament to the pistol's raw stopping power and his own resolve, when reinforcements finally reached his position, they discovered 8 dead Japanese soldiers sprawled around him, each brought down by the potent .45. These visceral anecdotes underscore the immediate, brutal reality faced by Japanese soldiers encountering the M1911A1 for the first time. The distinctive thump of a .45 striking flesh, the sheer physical displacement it caused, and the rapid incapacitation of their comrades fostered a profound psychological impact. It was not merely a weapon. It was an harbinger of overwhelming American firepower, a symbol of their adversary's willingness to equip its fighting men with tools of uncompromising lethality. The M1911A1 wasn't just outgunning the Nambu. It was inflicting a unique brand of battlefield horror that contributed significantly to the perception of American superiority in close-quarters engagements. The M1911A1's impact transcended mere ballistics. It waged a profound psychological war, etching itself into the collective consciousness of Imperial Japanese soldiers as an instrument of sheer terror. Its formidable presence on the battlefield was not simply about kinetic energy transfer, but about the overwhelming spectacle of its operation. The distinctive thunderous report of the .45 ACP round was a sound unlike any other in the Pacific theater, often described as a concussive blast that reverberated through the dense jungle and confined bunkers. This was no subtle pop. It was a percussive announcement of devastating power, a harbinger of instant brutal incapacitation. When that round struck, the visible effect was frequently catastrophic. The M1911's heavy 230-grain projectile, traveling at approximately 830 feet per second, delivered an immense shock to its target, often resulting in massive wound channels and a conclusive, undeniable stopping power that left little ambiguity for any observer. This graphic terminal effect was a stark contrast to the comparatively anemic performance of the Nambu's 8M round, whose lighter bullet and lower energy often led to less immediately decisive results. These grim observations were not lost on the Imperial Japanese Army. Intelligence summaries and the poignant, often terrified entries in captured diaries painted a consistent picture. The M1911A1 was an instrument of pure, unadulterated fear in close combat. Soldiers frequently described the terrible power of the American pistol, noting its ability to instantly halt even the most determined charge. One captured diary entry from a Japanese officer, found after the relentless fighting on Peleliu, chillingly recounted, "The American pistol, the .45, makes men cease to be men. Its roar is deafening, and its strike final." Such first-hand accounts provided invaluable insights to Allied intelligence, confirming that the M1911A1 was not merely a superior firearm, but a significant psychological weapon, eroding Japanese morale and contributing to their perception of an insurmountable American firepower advantage in the brutal, intimate confines of jungle warfare. This perception of overwhelming lethality made an already desperate fight even more terrifying for those facing the M1911A1. The stark contrast in battlefield effectiveness between the M1911A1 and the Nambu Type 14 was not merely a testament to their respective designs. It was a profound reflection of the industrial and logistical chasm separating the United States and Imperial Japan. America, an industrial juggernaut, possessed an unparalleled capacity for mass production and standardization. The M1911A1 pistol, a marvel of robust engineering, was produced in staggering numbers, over 1.8 million units by the war's end, with a consistent quality that ensured reliability and interchangeability of parts. This manufacturing prowess extended to its ammunition. The .45 ACP cartridge, a heavy, potent round, was produced in vast quantities, its standardization simplifying supply chains and ensuring that every Marine and soldier had access to reliable, effective ammunition. From the factory floor to the front line, the American war machine functioned with a terrifying efficiency. Each M1911A1 a perfectly calibrated instrument of close-quarters combat. Conversely, Japan's industrial base, while formidable in its own right, was fundamentally different in scale and resilience. The Nambu pistol, already plagued by design flaws, saw its production quality plummet under the immense strain of wartime exigencies. Resource shortages, particularly for high-grade steel and skilled labor, led to a discernible decline in craftsmanship and reliability as the war progressed. Furthermore, the Nambu's unique 8x22mm cartridge became a significant logistical Achilles heel. Unlike the globally ubiquitous .45 ACP, the Nambu round was a proprietary design, requiring dedicated manufacturing lines and complex supply routes vulnerable to Allied interdiction. As American submarines and aircraft systematically severed Japan's lines of communication and resource acquisition, the flow of essential ammunition to isolated garrisons became a nightmarish, often impossible task. Japanese soldiers frequently found themselves with pistols but no ammunition, or with ammunition that was unreliable, further eroding any confidence in their sidearms. This desperate struggle to maintain even basic supplies painted a grim picture of Imperial Japan's dwindling industrial capacity and its devastating impact on the individual soldier facing the terrifying efficacy of American firepower. The chasm between American and Japanese martial philosophies extended far beyond industrial output. It permeated the very training doctrines for their respective sidearms. American forces, particularly the Marine Corps, imbued their troops with a deep understanding of the M1911A1's role as a potent, last-ditch defensive weapon. Intensive marksmanship training emphasized quick target acquisition and the practical application of the .45 ACP's formidable stopping power in close-quarters engagements. The M1911A1 was not merely a sidearm, it was an extension of the soldier's will to survive, a tool to be mastered. Conversely, the Imperial Japanese Army's doctrine often relegated the Nambu pistol to a secondary, almost ceremonial status. While officers carried them as symbols of rank and authority, training focused predominantly on the rifle and bayonet, or for officers, the ancient art of the katana. The Bushido Code championed the spirit of the charge and the cold steel of the blade. The pistol was an afterthought, its practical utility in combat often overlooked or deemed secondary to the spirit of the fight. This divergence in philosophy was brutally underscored by the operational realities of the Pacific Theater. The M1911A1, a testament to John Moses Browning's genius, earned legendary status for its rugged dependability. Its robust construction and generous clearances allowed it to function relentlessly amidst the mud-soaked jungles of Guadalcanal, the sand-choked beaches of Tarawa, and the corrosive saltwater spray that permeated every aspect of island warfare. It was a weapon designed for war, capable of enduring the most punishing conditions and consistently delivering its devastating payload when a soldier's life hung in the balance. The Nambu, however, proved a stark contrast. Its intricate design, with smaller tolerances and a more delicate firing mechanism, was ill-suited for the unforgiving environment. Field reports frequently detailed malfunctions, sensitive firing pins prone to breakage, magazines susceptible to bending and jamming when exposed to dirt or impact, and a general susceptibility to the pervasive humidity and corrosion. A Japanese soldier caught in a desperate close-quarter struggle often found his Nambu to be an unreliable companion, its potential for failure adding another layer of terror to an already brutal combat scenario. As the Pacific War ground into its final brutal phases, the already significant disparity in personal sidearm effectiveness between American and Japanese forces grew exponentially. By 1944 and into 1945, the relentless industrial output of the United States continued to churn out M1911A1 pistols of consistently high quality and in unprecedented numbers. This ensured that American frontline personnel, from officers to non-commissioned officers and support troops, were often equipped with a reliable, potent close-quarters weapon. Conversely, the Japanese Imperial Army, under immense logistical strain and facing devastating attrition, saw the quality of its Type 14 Nambu pistols plummet. Manufacturing tolerances loosened, raw material shortages led to inferior components, and even ammunition became a critical, often irreplaceable commodity for isolated garrisons. The climactic battle for Okinawa in the spring of 1945 served as the ultimate horrifying crucible for this widening gap in personal firepower. As American forces engaged in some of the most savage and protracted fighting of the war, the M1911A1 became an even more pronounced and terrifying factor in the close-quarters combat that defined the campaign. Japanese defenders, indoctrinated in a fanatical doctrine of fighting to the last man, frequently employed gyokusai tactics, launching desperate banzai charges or engaging in suicidal resistance from elaborate cave systems, bunkers, and pillboxes. In these claustrophobic, often hand-to-hand engagements, the M1911A1's inherent strengths, its overwhelming .45 ACP stopping power, its rugged reliability in mud, rain, and grime, and its ergonomic design for rapid, decisive action, proved utterly indispensable. American Marines and soldiers found the M1911A1 to be their most trusted companion when clearing a dugout or repelling a sudden frenzied charge. The heavy impact of the .45 caliber bullet was often the only definitive counter to a determined Japanese soldier, frequently high on adrenaline and refusing to yield. Its concussive force and immediate incapacitation capabilities delivered a psychological blow far exceeding that of the smaller, less potent 8mm Nambu round. Japanese soldiers, often armed with their Nambu pistols as much for symbolic rank as for practical combat, frequently found their rounds ineffective against determined American advances, while the roar and impact of the M1911A1 instilled a palpable sense of dread. The stark reality was that the M1911A1, in the desperate confines of Okinawa's terrain, represented the ultimate arbiter of life and death, an instrument of fear and finality that underscored the technological and tactical superiority of the Allied forces in personal combat. Following the brutal campaigns like Okinawa, where the M1911 cemented its reputation as a decisive instrument of fear and finality, its efficacy forged an enduring legacy far beyond the cessation of hostilities. This sidearm solidified its status not merely as a weapon, but as a potent symbol of American military prowess, technological foresight, and uncompromising battlefield effectiveness. Its operational lifespan extended well past the capitulation of Japan. For decades, elite special operations units, from the dense jungles of Vietnam to clandestine operations across the globe, continued to rely on the M1911A1, a testament to its unparalleled reliability and terminal performance in close-quarters engagements. The stark lessons learned in the Pacific were rooted in a brutal, undeniable truth: the mathematics of ballistics. The M1911A1's formidable .45 ACP round, a 230-grain projectile traveling at approximately 830 feet per second, consistently delivered superior stopping power. This inherent physical advantage, meticulously proven in the Thompson-Lagarde tests decades prior, ensured immediate incapacitation, a critical factor when confronting determined, often fanatical charges. In direct contrast, the Nambu's 8x22mm round, a lighter 100-grain bullet at 1,000 feet per second, frequently lacked the kinetic energy transfer necessary to reliably halt an assailant, often resulting in superficial wounds that failed to neutralize the threat in a critical moment. This fundamental disparity in ballistic performance proved undeniably crucial, particularly in the desperate close-range combat that characterized the island-hopping campaigns. While the M1911 continued its operational service and evolved through numerous conflicts, the Type 14 Nambu, plagued by its design flaws, logistical shortcomings, and inadequate ballistic performance, largely receded into the annals of history, becoming little more than a coveted war trophy for Allied soldiers. Its operational lifespan effectively ceased with the war, a stark testament to its fundamental inadequacies when pitted against its American counterpart. The M1911, by contrast, secured its place as an iconic fixture in military history, its frightening cower not only a tactical advantage, but a psychological weapon that left an indelible mark on its adversaries. As our journey through the crucible of the Pacific War concludes, the echoes of the .5 caliber M1911A1 remain undeniably resonant. We have meticulously dissected its mechanical superiority, the devastating ballistic efficacy of its .45 ACP round, and its unparalleled reliability in the most unforgiving combat environments. Yet beyond the cold statistics and engineering lay its profound psychological footprint upon the Imperial Japanese forces.
For a Japanese soldier, steeped in a doctrine that often prioritized the spiritual resolve over raw firepower, The M1911A1 was nothing short of a tactical nightmare. It was the blunt, unforgiving instrument that consistently negated their banzai charges and bayonet assaults in the brutal cross-quarters fighting of jungle and pillbox. Its formidable stopping power, a term born from necessity and proven in the jungles of Mindanao and the coral beaches of Saipan, meant that a single, well-placed shot often rendered an enemy combatant unequivocally incapacitated. This was a stark, brutal reality far removed from the less decisive effects of their own Nambu pistol. The M1911A1 was not merely a sidearm, it became a symbol of American industrial might and a pragmatic understanding of the grim physics of combat. It represented a crucial, often decisive advantage in thousands of individual skirmishes, turning the tide of critical engagements where the margin of victory was measured in feet, not miles. Its consistent performance, contrasted with the Nambu's henja laws and dwindling quality, underscored a fundamental disparity in military philosophy and logistical capability that permeated the entire Pacific theater.
Ultimately, the M1911A1's legacy transcends its role as a mere firearm. It stands as an enduring testament to the devastating impact of superior design, overwhelming firepower, and unwavering reliability. For the American fighting man, it was a trusted companion and a last resort. For the Japanese soldier, it was the chilling embodiment of American combat effectiveness, a .45 caliber nightmare that irrevocably shaped the brutal landscape and outcome of the Pacific War.